Another cool little quirk about the Range Rover, up here you have two buttons. This one here is an SOS button which calls the emergency services, and then this one here calls Land Rover Assistance if you have any issues with your car. With this being the cheapest Range Rover Vogue in the UK, we've got a lot of issues. Now this was the cheapest Range Rover in the UK, but it hasn't managed to stay that way, mainly because of self-inflicted reasons. Now instead of trying just to repair this thing, I've also tried to upgrade it at the same time by adding an SVO kit, which is a 2018 SVO kit, which means it also needed a facelift. The facelifted body kit included things like this new rear bumper with twin exhaust tips, wider and lower, more aggressive door panels, and of course the SVO bumper, which leaves me having to buy a few extra things to complete the facelift, which wasn't cheap. The converted 2018 headlights, which famously cost me £3,500. A front grille because the old grille doesn't work with these headlights. And even a brand new bonnet because the pre-facelift bonnet comes just short of where it's supposed to do on the facelift. And if you want to complete the 2018 look, we're going to have to replace the rear lights as well for the facelift version. It's a good excuse to upgrade these though because, well, this ring isn't working. And that might have had something to do with being rolled into a ditch. Now I do see some of you asking, why do all these upgrades and modifications when there's still quite a lot of bodywork to be done? So to repair all these things like the scuffs, the scrapes, the dents, and also the rear quarter being pushed in, the car has to go to a body shop. It will also have to go to a body shop to be painted as well. So it makes sense to kill two birds with one stone and do all the bodywork and the paint all in one go. And it's also a good idea to fit an aftermarket body kit first before it's painted, just in case you need to make any adjustments, because once it's painted, well, there's sort of no going back. Now alongside some of the exterior upgrades, we've also upgraded some parts in the interior, including the climate control system. I think we should look at doing the infotainment system, but let me tell you about the steering wheel buttons. Now in the last video I tried to upgrade and replace the buttons which are on the steering wheel to the new 2018 buttons, which sort of look like touchscreen and they illuminate. They look pretty futuristic. But after installing them, I found they wouldn't work how they should work. Disappointing. And then after speaking to the manufacturer of these, apparently I've installed them wrong. Just like every male in the world, I didn't read the instructions. Now apparently I was supposed to remove this little plastic tab on the back of the buttons here. Now although when you remove this black plastic tab, it reveals nothing but a few electrical connectors which still won't be connected up to anything, I don't know how this is going to work, but I was going to give it a try anyway. As you guys know now, there's a bolt to remove the flappy paddles, and once you remove the flappy paddles, it reveals the bolt to remove the switches. But then you can't remove the switches unless you pop the airbag out first, which is what we've done. And there we go, both for the old switches out. Now one of the next vital steps in the instructions was to make sure that the headlights are off. Then we connect the new buttons left side first and then the right side. Apparently again, this is important. Now I think the saying goes, the act of stupidity is doing something the same over and over again but then expecting a different result. But this time, we've done something slightly different, but I still feel like it's going to be stupid. Apparently now we've just got to turn on the ignition, turn the lights on. Both of them have lit up this time, so we got further than last time. Turn the lights on, the volume works, that works, they work. So that weird plastic cap here, which covered over some sort of electrical connectors which don't connect to anything, has now made it work, and we now have the upgraded 2018 buttons. Now, in order for this car to get to the body shop when it's finally done, I'd like to be able to drive it there. And to drive it there, it needs to be safe for the road. And to be safe for the road, it needs to pass an MOT test. And just like the C63, there is loads of problems and things stopping this from passing an MOT test at the minute. Now, one thing that doesn't look the safest is the amount of camber that we have on the driver's side wheel. Now, I know when I first bought the car, it had a fair amount of damage to this front driver's side. The inner tie rod had popped out, the rear suspension arm was broken, and the wheel was obliterated. Now, even though we've replaced those parts, apart from the wheel, which we'll get to, we've experienced in other crash damage cars that it's probably best just to replace the full thing, because it only takes one tiny thing to be out a millimetre, and that could cause the camber and the full tracking to be out by quite a bit. So I went ahead and bought a full suspension leg with all the arms from eBay. And after unpackaging it, well, it seems a bit of a mess. And this definitely didn't look like a 5-minute job. The time was already 4 minutes to 6 and it didn't look like I was going to get home for dinner. So I opened the fridge and cracked open a Y Food. Now you see, Y Food is a meal replacement drink, and if you're like me and constantly on the go and are guilty of grabbing a bit of fast food to fill up here and there, then Y Food is a thing for you. Now these things aren't a diet drink, a protein shake or a weight gainer, they're simply just a meal replacement drink. Not only that, Y Food have so many different flavours available and even vegan options. Inside one of those shakes there is 26 vitamins and minerals. It's high in fibre, high in protein, it's lactose free and it's gluten free. You can either get it in powder form, and they also do these tasty bars as well. So if you fancy replacing an unhealthy meal with a healthy Y Food shake, then you can do by clicking the link in the description. With that link, you can go and grab yourself a Y Food taster pack to find your favourite flavour, and also with this banner appearing underneath me right now, you can save yourself a nice bit of discount as well. Thanks Y Food, let's get this wheel hub off. Now I think this job would have been fairly easy if it wasn't a Range Rover. Everything on this car is heavy as anything. First thing I need to take off is the caliper and the brake disc. I'm going to tie the caliper up here just so it's not hanging by the brake line to cause any damage. Then there's just one bolt holding the brake disc to the wheel hub. We can undo that and remove the disc. Then we're onto all the arms. First off is the track rod end. I pop the socket and the bolt back on just so I can give it a knock out of its location point. And then there's a few heat shield behind it stopping me from removing the track rod end completely, so they need to be removed before I can pull the track rod end out of the location. Then it's the big bolt for the drive shaft. I'm going to leave that to soak before pulling the drive shaft out because it was pretty tight. Then there was a long pinch bolt at the top of the suspension holding the sort of upper wishbone to it. With that undone, I can sort of pull the hub away from the drive shaft. And then there's a bolt at the bottom of the damper which releases it from the lower arm. And then a nut and bolt holding the front lower suspension arm on. And then also another nut and bolt for the middle suspension arm. Now with this being so heavy, I called Hannah in to help me. And even then, I still had to go and get a little tool tray to balance it on. And it didn't come out easy, it needed a bit of persuasion. Now this front arm here has already been replaced and I'd like to swap it over onto the new one, but I seem to have lost my 36mm 12-point socket. So I have to switch that over when I've got a new one. But now I can start lifting up and fitting the brand new second-hand suspension unit that I got from eBay. The only thing that I'm not going to be transferring is that dodgy drive shaft that I got with it. And then it's just a case of doing everything but in reverse order. Making sure to preload the suspension before I tighten all the suspension bolts back up. Okay, so we're all on and ready, but to me, it still looks a little cambered. Now, if you look a bit to the side, you can kind of see it's almost tilted in a little bit. I don't know whether that's normal or not. The one thing that we haven't replaced is this top wishbone here, which could be the culprit, but we do have another one down there. Very, very worst case. But what I'm going to do to make it a fair test is grab the wheel off the back, pop that on the front, and then we can compare the two and see if we're good or not. Okay, so here is the moment of truth. It actually doesn't look too bad how it is at the minute, but let's get it down and we'll see if we're in a straight line. Okay, so it's definitely less offensive now. You can still see a little bit of camber, but I don't know whether that's normal. The tracking is way out, and on this side, it's pretty similar, but we're not going to be able to tell 100% until we actually get it on like a wheel alignment, but it's definitely better. So I'll be definitely keeping this wishbone spare just in case. So quite clearly, we're still missing some parts of the front end. One of them being the grille, the other one being the bonnet, and of course, a windscreen as well. And just like like that, we have a new grille. This one is for the facelift model. It's just got different cutouts here, and it's a slightly different groove around where the top of the bonnet meets the grille. This was fairly easy to pick up on eBay. I think it was around 150 quid, so not bad at all. And it's all gloss black to match the rest of the trims on the bumper. So let's get this fitted, and then I'll tell you about the bonnet.
Every time you slip, back you up, every time you trip, I'ma be there.
Fitting the front grille is pretty self-explanatory. It just clips into place, and then there's a bunch of plastic sort of push pins which fit into the top. Okay, it's mad how a grille can make the sort of front end look completely different. It's starting to come together now. Look at that gloss black grille. That has got so much presence now on the front, but you may notice the bonnet's actually meant to finish here along with the headlight, and then the 2015 bonnet is just a tiny bit too short. I know some of you guys have mentioned maybe I could extend the bonnet by adding a part of metal on there and welding it or something along those lines, but because the bonnet is so prominent, anything like that would just stand out and maybe just look slightly weird. So I've had to buy a new bonnet. And when I mean a new bonnet, I mean a new bonnet. This was brand new from Jaguar Land Rover, not brand new second-hand. It was actually pretty difficult to find a second-hand bonnet which was 2018 facelift for the Range Rover. There was plenty of Range Rover sport bonnets kicking around, and a lot of you guys sent me links to them, but it turns out the sport bonnet is different to the Range Rover Vogue. So I ended up ringing Jaguar Land Rover directly, and they got me a brand new bonnet for £965. It sounds expensive, but actually I think that's pretty good, especially when you compare it to a C63, which cost me £900 for a second-hand bonnet. So now it's just the case of unboxing it and getting it fitted to the Range Rover. Let's do it. Now, the only issue when buying a brand new bonnet is that you literally get no hardware with it at all. So everything has to come off the old bonnet, including the bonnet latches, the sound deadening, and all the rubber seals around it. Also on the Range Rover, the washer jets for the windscreen are built into the bonnet. So all the pipes and the washer jets will need to be removed from that bonnet and placed on the new one. Before finally undoing the bonnet, popping it off, and then popping on the new bonnet, and then fitting all the hardware back onto the new bonnet.
Pas de problème, juste solution, pas de pilule pour protection. Y a pas de force dans la balance, car si tu tombes, c'est quand t'apprends. Pour maintenant, pour maintenant, pour maintenant.
Okay, looking good. The new bonnet is on, but there was a small difference. These were the washer jets which came off the old bonnet, and unfortunately they're different on the new bonnet. God knows why they changed it, but the actual cutouts, which are sort of up here somewhere, are a completely different cutout to the old bonnet. So it looks like we're gonna have to order some new washer jets, because of course you can't pass an MOT without these. Yes. Look at that. That is so much better. The bonnet actually closes now. The fitment is better. Obviously, we're still missing the Range Rover badge on the front, but there's no point putting that on until it's painted. Now, what would be nice now is to put the rest of the interior back in and hopefully get rid of this airbag light. And I should be able to do that now thanks to this seatbelt, so let's get it all installed. Now, you guys have seen me remove and fit the rear seatbelts in this plenty of times over. Of course, we need to change the seatbelts because they lock out when the airbags deploy.
You need a cold shower to snap out of the illusion. I'ma be the one to send you to that conclusion. You don't even see it coming till shit hits the fan. Hey, you just walk around it all day long like it's a plan. Easy, easy now.
And there we go, one working seatbelt and a complete interior. Okay, now this could go one of a few ways now. First way, probably unlikely, but we start the car and there's no more airbag light. The second way, we still have an airbag light on the dash, but we plug in a code reader, cancel that light off, and then it doesn't reappear. And then the third way, which is probably the most likely, we have to take the airbag ECU out, which looks like this, send it off, get it reset, and plug it all back in, and then that should work. But well, let's find out. How is my look today? Airbag light is on and still on. Oh, it's gone! Yes! No, oh, it's came back. Oh, for a second it had me, for a second. Option number 2, the code reader. Now, weirdly, I've scanned for fault codes and, well, 0 issues found. So it doesn't look as if my diagnostic tool can cancel off that light. So it looks as if we may be taking the airbag ECU out, which I think is located somewhere underneath here. I don't think it's too difficult to remove. But before I do that, I will try another diagnostic tool just to find out.
Look, tell me what's the vibes, what's the mood? Yeah, I just hit a Mikey for the juice. Yeah, ain't no capping, I'ma tell the truth.
Now, from the driver's side, she is really beginning to look well. But as for the passenger side, well, that's a different story. Now, if you remember in the last video, I showed you that these rear lights, well, the top one here is not illuminated. It should look like that. But inside this box, we have a solution. Right here, I have new rear lights, and these are actually off the 2018 model. Now, at first, I didn't think there was too much of a difference between the new one and the old one, and well, I guess I'm kind of right. There really isn't a huge difference between the two. They're obviously the same shape, but this one has 2 sort of squares in it. This one has a few squares and then some lines at the bottom. But the good news about these ones is that, well, I didn't have to pay $3.5 grand for them. But these aren't as simple as plug and play, and we're gonna have to do a little bit of wiring to make these work. But unfortunately, I seem to have run out of time today. I know you're all gonna kill me for that, so you're gonna have to stay tuned for the next video where we begin more upgrades and more repairs to the Range Rover. Trust me, it'll be worth it. So if you've enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button, and I guess I'll see you in the next video. Peace out. A bit of fast food here and there, then this is the thing.